Live. Somebody's got. Probably. All right. Yes. No, I got it. You got it? All right. Okay. This is the August 25th meeting of Manhattan Community Board 5 Transportation Committee. I'm David Sigmund, Chair, soon to be joined by Samir Lavingia, Vice Chair. Any items voted on at this meeting, of which there won't be any, will appear at the full CB5 board meeting on Thursday, September 11th. We have two items on the agenda today. We have a review of the transportation components of the Midtown South mixed-use rezoning that just was passed earlier this month. And then we'll do some orientation and a review of that topics and teams chart that I sent around, so we can do some planning for what the committee will be working on for the coming year. We will start by going around the table, and if you could just announce who you are for the record.
Will Rothschild, Charles Baker,
Kelly Singh,
Robert Tuckman,
Athena Saul.
Joel Maxman.
Kieran Patel.
Zul Zolkowitz. And online.
Hi, I'm on Cordell.
Okay, great. Have any public members on? I just say read
just
three
Ankur,
panelists.
Will, and the community board.
Can you read that, Charles? Or do we have attendees on the right in gray?
0 attendees.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so just CB5 on Will.
Okay. Are there, before we get into the agenda, does anybody have any new business they want to put on the agenda?
Welcome back, welcome new members.
All right, so I've got a presentation to catch everybody up on what happened with Midtown South, particularly as it relates to this committee. So we'll go through that and answer any questions anybody has on that, and give you some of the history, because I mean, you straddled the activity on Midtown South. So and a lot of the visible action kind of took place as we got close to the city council vote. So we'll go through all of that. So Will, if you could, yeah.
Tech assistance.
All right. There's our inspirational quote. Okay, next slide.
Yeah.
So I'll start a little bit from the base here. So this in yellow, those are the areas that were addressed by the Midtown South rezoning, and they were divided into quadrants. The northwest quadrant was what we all called the Garment District. Southeast is adjacent to Madison Square Park. Southwest is kind of FIT and adjacent to Chelsea, and northeast is really just part of Midtown East. So we'll get into like what the zoning was and what the components of this were, but that's the basic geography of it. The area that you see in purple, it's the existing Midtown South Garment District was all zoned for manufacturing, and residential use was by exception. So that's why I think there were less than 2,000 residents in those areas, which is also why there wasn't a lot of pushback on the zoning, because nobody lived there.
It's an awfully good caption.
Yeah, yeah. So, yeah, although that's changing, right, I guess.
Yeah.
Austin will be
Exactly.
red now. So,
It'll be like Austin is to New York.
Yeah, so everything you see in red is a commercial zone, everything in yellow is a residential zone, a lot of them are kind of swing. And then there's a lot of, you've got Bryant Park and Madison Square, adjacent to this as well.
David, what's the southernmost street there?
Roughly. You mean of the rezoning?
Of the, yeah, the forum.
Oh,
Union Square at the bottom.
24th, I guess.
Yeah.
And-
No, is it, that's not Union Square at the very bottom.
Right.
Oh, that was Bryant Park, then Madison Square.
Yeah,
Oh,
or
yeah,
are you
okay,
talking
yeah.
about the blue? Yeah, so
23rd.
Union Square actually does have an M zoned area that wasn't
Right.
addressed by this, yeah.
Yeah.
That'll come up in the next, in the new Manhattan plan. Okay. So, this is taken from the environmental impact statement on the left. Are development sites that were identified by city planning, during the process, so areas that are either vacant or underutilized and could be demolished. And on the right, all the blue are existing buildings that were potential conversion candidates. Now, interestingly, if you look at the top, they were saying that there could be close to 10,000 new apartments built there, but under 1,000 of them from conversions. So, you know, it wasn't really clear to us how you were gonna jam 9,000 new units on the handful of sites that they identified in the left view. While the right view with all the existing stuff was only gonna yield 800 units, but that's what the math suggested.
And that's the guess that there'll be a lot more demolition than perhaps.
Yeah. Yep. So this is, was actually our proposal back to, city planning. We basically took their map and their densities and, so the FAR, floor area ratio, a lot of these areas averaged under 10 floor area ratio today. And the proposal is to go up to 15 for commercial, 18 for residential. And in some areas, you know, slightly less than that. Of the things that we proposed, actually, they all kind of happened in a slightly different form. The number one, our proposal was to downzone the mid blocks of the northwest quadrant, the garment district, in order to preserve more of the existing buildings. And while the final proposal didn't downzone, it actually identified a group of around 50 buildings that they wanted to preserve. And they left those as manufacturing zone, no residential. So you won't see conversion of those buildings, and it's intended to then be a home for garment district, manufacturing and design firms. So, so that number one in the biggest part, between 7th and 8th. Number one between Broadway and 7th didn't happen, so that's all as originally proposed, 15 for commercial, 18 for residential. We didn't propose anything for the northeast quadrant, so it got passed as it was. Southeast, there was a lot of debate because there are a large number of landmarked properties in that area. And as a way to try and protect those from demolition, we had proposed reducing the floor area to a 15. In that whole zone, the area that's in the kind of oval, in the bottom of the southeast is actually a historic district, 2 historic districts. And so that's effectively a 12 floor area ratio because it's limited by landmark preservation. So what city council ultimately approved was a reduction in the density of the northern part of the southeast quadrant to, I think, a 15. And then the proposal that we made was actually to upzone number 3 in the southwest quadrant. We were proposing, in order to try and make up for the things we were downzoning, we were proposing to upzone the avenue frontage along 7th Avenue between like 27th and 30th Streets. That was rejected. I guess once you do the environmental impact statement, we can't propose an upzoning. We can only propose downzoning. So the upzoning was rejected, although some of the concepts of that were applied to that area in blue at the top of it was kind of a technical argument on how to preserve more of the existing buildings in the southwest quadrant. So a lot of what we proposed got adopted, but in the sausage factory, it came out in a different form than what we had proposed.
David, I think it might be worth pointing out that the concern over the higher FAR in the southeast in respect to the landmarks is it made those air rights less valuable. And in that respect, perhaps endangered viability of the land.
Yes. And they had proposed the 12, and that was never really seriously considered. It was too big a reduction in the number of housing units, which is what everybody focused on, but sort of 9,700 units. Nobody wanted to play around with that very much. They wanted as much housing production as we could get. So that's the zoning piece of it, just for background. And yeah, go on. So this was actually lifted from Councilman Botcher's press release of what the transportation components of MSMX. So there's kind of two pieces of negotiation. One is the zoning. But then the other piece of it is a lot of non-zoning mitigation stuff. In this case, how do you take kind of an industrial part of the city and make it residential? And what kind of resources can the city provide in order to do that? So that's called points of agreement. They used to be called community benefit agreements. And so we were involved mostly with the council members' office and with him directly a fair amount on kind of what the community board was proposing, which was a very long list. There's a resolution online if you're interested in doing the homework. But we went to each committee and said, what is it you would like to accomplish in Midtown South? And we ended up coming up with a whole series of recommendations from each committee. And we combined that into a single resolution that became kind of the working document for the council member's office. And, like everything else, we didn't get everything we wanted, but we got quite a bit of it. Transportation was kind of an early actor on this. We passed a resolution very early in the process based on other things that we had already been working on. What did we want to see in the zone? And we got a lot of it. There were a handful of items that we were more specific about, but they still kind of ended up in these categories, but not to the same level of specificity as what we had developed. So I'll step quickly through this and then I have some more detail. So the 34th Street busway, DOT came to us relatively early in the process with a conceptual design for something to happen on 34th Street, not fully defined. And we were then approached by community boards 4 and 6. So between the three of us, we go river to river and cover 34th Street. And our focus was on a busway. So we each had public hearings and we each ended up passing similar resolutions supporting a busway, which helped DOT because they weren't sure exactly what the answer was. And so we pushed them towards a busway. They came back to us with a design. We'll look a little bit at that. And then at some point, the administration stopped making progress on this. And hey, Samir, how you doing?
Good, how are you?
So to the councilman's, quick thinking, he put it back on the table as part of Midtown South. So as a standalone proposal, it was kind of languishing. But as part of what needs to be done in order for Midtown South to work properly, it got picked up again. So that was a big win for us and the other two community boards. Subway station renovations. I mean, we look at these kind of on individual projects. They tend to show up more in land use because they're bonusable in land use, and those have to be approved by the community board. But we were pushing on this as a general topic. And you'll see also later the kind of radius that these zoning bonuses would apply to was broadened under MSMX to make sure that it picked up all of the subway stations in the area. Broadway Vision, which Zool worked on quite a bit. We had seen pieces of it. Again, we'll show you that in the rest of the presentation, but in one fell swoop, MSMX let us get all the funding for a permanent solution to Broadway Vision. So I'm sure if you've walked, on any part of Broadway, you can see pieces of it. It's been kind of experimental, different parts of it look different. And now we're starting to get to a more common language of what this thing's gonna be. Because there's no real open space, there's no new park as part of this rezoning. And so the idea was, let's try and use Broadway as much as possible as, open space, green space. And so all of that, to the tune of almost $400 million, got funded as part of Midtown South rezoning. So that was a huge win for us and accelerates the timeline pretty dramatically. Street safety enhancements,
Just
yeah,
one
sure.
quick note on Broadway Vision.
Yep.
Won't get into it because we can talk for hours on this. But if you have a chance, we saw a presentation by a grassroots group called the Broadway Linear Park Project. So you can just Google that and you have a chance to say it. And so basically their idea is to turn Broadway from Union Square up to Columbus Circle into a park. Enough said.
Well, I mean, I think that idea was picked up in the discussion
Yes.
as like, let's do something more than the Broadway vision you see today. And because of the lack of green space, we need to come up with an answer that's more clearly green than it is, a road.
And they put much more future focus into this than DOT has at this point. But this is a long process, a lot of major infrastructure that has to be replaced, huge
Yep.
capital projects. But all the bids are buying into it, and there's a lot of movement in this direction.
So I've got some of those drawings, so you'll get a sense of, where this is going. The street safety stuff, I mean, the biggest issues for us are just how crowded sidewalks are, between Port Authority Bus Terminal and Penn Station. And 34th Street, I think, is the largest outdoor shopping mall in the world. So there's just a ton of pedestrians and too much interaction between vehicles and pedestrian. So you'll see the piece from the EIS that deals with this, but there are improvements, particularly as part of the 34th Street busway. But it goes beyond that. It's all over the district, and it's ways of improving really those interactions between pedestrians, bikes, and vehicles. And then the last piece of this, which is not the biggest piece, but the 7th Avenue bike lane runs all the way from Houston Street to Central Park, except for 4 blocks right in the middle of MSMX. And so the funding for that was put in place as part of this. So that's the top line, but we'll go into a little bit more detail, and feel free to ask any questions or. So the busway is still in conceptual design. And the question that always comes up is, is the busway going to be river to river? And the answer is there's really no way to do that, because there's so much traffic that spills into and out of the tunnel and the FDR on the east side, and the Lincoln Tunnel and West Side Highway on the west side. They're 2 big mixing bowls at each end of 34th Street. So the busway proposal really runs from 3rd to 9th. And then the traffic kind of reformulates itself outside of that zone. You can go to the next. So this is just to give you a little taste. The presentation, which we had, I think, last May, covered each of the major intersections. And so it shows you kind of the level of design and how this thing is going to work. It's a pretty complicated piece of work. You can see in yellow, there's some pedestrian improvements. There's a lot of restriping. There are exclusive bus zones. And there's a lot of planning around where the bus stops are and how buses move in and out of those areas. And if I showed you, this was just a sample. If you look at each avenue, the answer is different for each one. So it's a complicated piece of work. And they're still in the middle of the planning process for this, including traffic studies and the rest of it. But as I said. Yeah,
Sorry.
jump in, yeah. You know, this was kind of what's that?
Is that Mina?
No, it's all veggie. It was rescued kind of from the graveyard, at the last minute as part of the negotiations over the rezoning. And, we should be hearing back from DOT sometime in the fall about what's going on with the traffic studies.
And we just might want to point out that that red area by the bus stop, that's actually raised. So it's at sidewalk level. So it's easier for folks to board and deboard the bus.
Yeah. The, temporary plastic bus stop is gonna be replaced with hardscape, so.
Is the shallow pedestrian space also delineated in some ways or raised or?
I think it's literally extending the sidewalk because of how much traffic there is, yeah,
And that's the Empire State Building, so there are the bollards there as well.
yeah. So it shortens the distance across 34th Street and it helps, you know, meet some of the need for space in that area. So this is the subway station piece of it, and, you know, it's that map that you saw of the development sites and conversion sites, in each of the quadrants, overlaid with the subway, stops. And so I think it was a 1,500-foot radius from each site, that you could attract the bonus. So, you know, if you're in a remote corner of one of those, and you're looking to get the subway improvement bonus, you can reach out as far as 1,500 feet to identify the subway station that'll get the bonus, which could be, you know, installing an elevator or, you know, upgrades that are discussed with MTA at the time. So it literally covers, I think there are 26 subway stations in the zone. All of them are now covered under that radius. We're not sure. The other piece of this from a zoning standpoint is that at an 18 FAR for a lot of these sites, we weren't sure how many people were gonna, the maximum bonus you can get is 20%. So that'll take you from an 18 to a 21.5, whatever the math is. And is that enough to get people to go through the pain of a subway bonus? Which requires, you know, heavy duty engineering, a lot of interaction with MTA, and they're very, very expensive. I mean, I've heard numbers like $25 million for an elevator.
And they don't work half the time.
Yeah. So the issue really is gonna be amassing large enough sites where it does make sense to go through all of that. And the jury is out on, you know, how much of that we're gonna see. So I think the pieces are all being put in place. And we'll have to see over time. The 10,000 units, by the way, is a 10-year measurement.
Is there proportionality? So the bonus that you get, if you have whatever, 1,000 extra square feet, you have to spend so much money?
Yeah, there's a negotiation with MTA over what you have to provide in order to, you know, and it goes to DCP. But I mean, the good thing is they're all addressed. And then we'll just have to see how the rest of it plays out. And, you know, our guess was at some point there's gonna have to be additional, you know, MTA money. Because the bonus by itself is probably not gonna pay for all the improvements that are needed in the zone. But that'll come later. Okay. So, this is what I mentioned before. So on the left are the components of Broadway Vision. They sort of broke it out by business improvement district. So, you know, Union Square, Flatiron, 34th and Garment District, and then up to Times Square. And the improvements continue all the way up to 57th Street. So kind of in one fell swoop, we're gonna be funding the Flatiron, 34th and Garment District piece of this. So from 21st to 42nd Street. And permanent, not temporary. So that's, again, the language from Councilman Botcher's press release. So you can take a look at that. That's the kind of basic scope of what's gonna be done.
And getting restrooms is a huge success for us.
Yeah. And playgrounds, I mean,
And
make it
all of that.
family friendly
But
and.
how long has this fight for restrooms been? It's been forever.
Mhm. Okay. So. This was being brought to us. Before all of this, it being brought in pieces. So the first piece we saw was taking. The section from 38th to 40th Street, which is temporary. Today. Paint and asphalt and bollards. And making it permanent. So we saw this last December. And I think these two blocks were something on the order of $20 million or something, and. You know, it's being brought up to grade so that it's a shared street between the sidewalk. And the street itself. There's subways that run very shallow, just below the surface of Broadway there, so you don't have a lot of room. So all of the planting is being done in above ground tree pits rather than below grade, or, you know. And the language, the design language has been really simplified from what you see as you walk down Broadway. They tried every experiment on chicanes, you know, if you
Yeah.
change the direction of the road, it'll slow traffic down. So they tried all of those out. And they ended up really simplifying it when it came time to do it permanently. I mean, part of it's cost, that if you change everything every block, it becomes pretty challenging to design it and build it. So I think that was part of it. And the other part was just lessons learned. I think there was a lot of confusion in the areas where the roads moved around too much because pedestrians didn't know like where they were safe and where they weren't, and bike riders would be switching back and forth. So I think they ended up going back to something that's a lot more straightforward. The block on the right, so from 39th to 40th, it has bollards. That's emergency access only, that road, so otherwise it's a bike lane. And on the left-hand side between 38th and 39th, that has limited access, you know, for local access. So cars can drive through there. But they'll be sharing that street with bikes. So that'll be interesting.
But if we get the bike lane right, we're really gonna have a pedestrian friendly plaza.
Right, well, yeah, I mean, that was the idea of basically. You know, isolating the bikes into the shared vehicle area. And keeping it out of the pedestrianized areas. So that's the plan, and you can see it's a lot more green than, you know, they didn't really do very much greening at all. The bid spent some money on pots elsewhere, but here, you know, this is a first stab at, you know, making it feel more park-like than just a road. So this is the first thing we saw that was permanent, and go on the next one. This was what we saw recently for the piece from 35th to 42nd. And you know, the three things on the left are sort of showing you what the phasing of it would be. I think all of that's changed courtesy of the funding that's available. But each block kind of has its own design concept because of what's going on the block. And we actually got comments during our public hearing that like there's a plaza block, if you look in the middle one, the 2025 in pink at the bottom, and that's the higher building, which is a public assembly hall, you know, it's a catering facility. So they said they need to get taxis and black cars there. They can't just have it be a closed block. So there's part of what we asked for when we saw this as a standalone was that there'd be more of a public design process so that DOT can get this input. They did, you know, go out to street fairs and set up in Bryant Park and whatever else they did to get public input. But when people really focused on it, we got a whole range of comments. So as part of going through the design on this, we're gonna schedule in a series of public design charrettes. So on the right was, I think that was 37th to 38th Street, so a block below what we looked at before. And you can see it still has like the chicane, it's still pretty complicated. You know, our guess is we're going to be skipping over this generation of design and going to something that looks more like what we saw.
David,
Between
maybe we should
38th
explain
and
the
40th.
chicane.
Well, just how that road like twists, that if you make a car, you know, move on an indirect path like that, they'll drive slower. So that was the concept, and, you know, maybe it worked, but it also created a lot of confusion. So, as I said, I mean, this was their kind of temporary proposal. A lot of this work was gonna be interim until they could raise the money to do the permanent improvements, but now I think we're going straight to permanent design. Oh, I'm sorry. And then the last piece of this, which we haven't seen really anything on, is the southern piece, kind of north of Union Square up to 34th Street, 35th Street. I don't think we've seen anything on that yet, so that'll be the last piece that comes through.
Although we know we're gonna get a lot more plantings this year through Flatiron Nomad, they're doing much bigger trees and other planters, so we're gonna continue with that.
So in terms of, you know, the design, we don't really have a sense yet of what the timing is, and I think that's something, part of what we've talked about with DOT is just keeping better track of all of the things we're talking to them about and what the timing would be and what their progress is. So that's something that's on the topic list. Okay. This is, I mentioned the street safety enhancement. So this is a graphic from the environmental impact statement. And you can see the key. I mean, it's a way of identifying, everything in red is where they looked at pedestrian flows. The purple boxes, blue boxes are where subway entrances are. So they went through and studied all of these. I have to say, and it was a general comment we had about the environmental impact statement. There wasn't a lot of proposals on how to you know, kind of ameliorate any of the situations that came up. There was a lot of like, we'll tweak the timing on light signals, we'll try and widen sidewalks or eliminate you know, sidewalk interference, like street vendors or news vendors. You know, it was a lot of stuff at the increment, but what came out at the end is a lot more permanent improvement that's actually funded, because I think that was part of the problem, is that DOT didn't really have a source of funding for doing a lot of permanent improvements here. But you know, now they do, courtesy of the points of agreement that was negotiated. So I think these areas that are identified, we'll see a lot more action in terms of permanent pedestrian improvements.
Did we get a lot of the daylighting that Anchor was doing?
Not specifically, didn't come up. It's a separate, you know, there's a piece floating around in city council on daylighting, so. The last. Oh, I'm sorry, yeah, this is the last one. So if you look at the graphic on the left, in green, it's a lot of the bike lanes on the 7th Avenue piece already exists. And the piece that was missing is the stuff you see in front of Madison Square Garden, and I guess a little bit of it from the purple arrow. So funding was included for that, so you'll have a continuous ride on 7th Avenue, protected bike lane, all the way from Houston to Central Park South. The rest of some of these proposed improvements, some of it's picked up because Broadway is being improved, but it wasn't otherwise addressed in MSMX. On the right-hand side, top is the existing lane layout, and bottom is the proposed, which already exists on most of 7th Avenue. And that was it. So we got a lot of our laundry list taken care of courtesy of one final negotiation. I have to say the process, between land use and us and the other committees just went really well, and it was fast. We don't have a lot of time to review this stuff under Euler, but everybody was able to kind of produce it, and the issue was getting it out on the table so that it was available for the negotiations at the end of the process. A lot of this happened in a relatively short period of time. It helped that CB5, we were really the only community board. CB4 had a little piece on the west side of 8th Avenue in the northwest quadrant, and a little bit in Chelsea in the southwest quadrant. Otherwise, all of it was CB5. And Councilman Botcher overlapped like 100% with MSNX. There was a little piece of it that was Councilman Powers. So that actually helped because it was sort of a concentrated discussion. And then, we did a pretty complete job of putting out our list of what we would like to see. And that helped accelerate the discussion, when it finally got to the council member. And we had good models with other recent rezonings, Inwood, Upper Manhattan, the Soho rezoning that took place. So we could look at what other community boards and community groups had asked for on other rezonings, and that helped structure what we were doing.
Yeah, I think just one more thing to mention on MSMX is that. For CB4, I will say that the stuff that they asked for in their resolution was a lot more aggressive than we asked for, and as far as I know, they got none of it. And additionally, they came out saying no, but here's what we want anyways, and they also got none of it. And I think it was a good strategic move on our part to see that clearly the council member was supportive of this. He's talked about this all the time. And I personally think that us saying yes, and here are the things we want to help you get there, actually helped us a lot get a lot of the stuff we were asking for. I think we said no, but here's what we want. I don't know if we would have got as much.
And we were at a much higher level of detail. CB4's comments were very general. Whereas, what we did was literally like, we want this here. And as I said, for each of the committees. So that helped because when you get to the end of the process, it's very pressurized, and there's not a lot of time to try and figure out what you meant if you weren't clear about it the first time. So we had a few meetings with Botcher's office to go through like what it all meant, but it was all very detailed and prescriptive. So
Yeah, just to Samir's point and your prior point, I think really too, since City of Yes really learned to work better both in committee and cross committee, and that's been very effective.
Yep.
Do we know if the transportation upgrades have a more accelerated timeline versus the rest of the FSMX project?
Well, I think the thing that's really on the fast track is the busway and the Broadway vision piece of it. I think the rest of it still has a lot of design to go through and figure out exactly what they meant. But there are dollars associated with them at this point. We haven't seen the final points of agreement, but that document kind of outlines what the scope of work is and how much money is being allocated in the budget for it.
It's also a little area, where we have these huge infrastructure projects, huge capital intensive projects, and it's kind of unknown until they actually get into the ground. So 23rd Street, where else? Several places, up and down both Broadway and Fifth.
In terms of what?
Major infrastructure,
Oh.
water mains and the like.
Yeah, I mean, I think Broadway, once they get in there, is gonna be a bit of a mess because it's,
For a couple of years.
you've got subways that come up within a few feet of the street surface and then utilities that run alongside that. So it just takes a long time to do that work.
But we're gonna see some big changes, because once that happens, particularly at 23rd and Broadway, where the triangle is between Fifth and Broadway, a lot of that's gonna go very, very green. So in some ways, we're really gonna see almost a substantial expansion of Madison Square Park into that. And whatever we're gonna get, little by little, a Broadway linear park.
And they've got that piece from 38th to 40th, and that'll be started sooner, and they'll dig that up and they'll see what the issues
Yeah.
are. So that should inform what happens on the rest of it.
Dave, is there any, besides the negotiated accessibility improvements that developers may pay? Is there any funding in this for subway accessibility, for subway station accessibility improvements?
Nothing specific. There's no, yeah, because it's a city thing, not an MTA thing. So this was a commitment of city funds, not, a commitment to get MTA to fund money.
Okay.
That's not really how it's structured. One thing that came up was, the 28th Street stop on the number one, the one that there's like a river that runs under it, and there was all that video of water like shooting up out of the platform. Apparently, there's a separate effort to try and figure something out for that.
And at one point at 23rd, Nadler's office said that they had gotten some federal funds. I can't imagine that we have those anymore.
Yeah, I don't know. I think, again, anything that's MTA, if it's developer funded, courtesy of the rezoning, that has a process. Everything else is just subject to whatever MTA's capital, budgeting processes. All right. Any other questions on that? Okay. You perhaps should get an attendee.
There is one person, let me see who it is, Miriam Fisher, should I?
Sure.
Yeah. All right. You should be able to unmute yourself.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, I just wanted to share, I'm actually from Community Board 4 and Elevator Action Group. And in terms of accessibility is something I've been very involved with. And I was able to get MTA, I don't know if you know this, MTA approval for 2 stops on 23rd, 7th Avenue and 8th Avenue. It was a lot of work. The MTA has guidelines of their what they want in an accessible station. I followed that. I got a lot of community support. I did a rally just about this time last year with Jesse Greenwald, co-chair of Transportation Committee. We did a rally together. We got support from the electeds, especially Eric Botcher, but also Tony Simone, Brad Holman Siegel, even Jerry Nadler was there, and Mark Levine. So we got a lot of elected support. I got a lot of community support from block associations. It was a lot of work. But we had the MTA approval. Hopefully in 2026, they're going to start working on it because they didn't do a lot of stations that were on the list in this year because of the halt in funding from congestion pricing, thanks to the governor. So they have 23 stations that were supposed to be done. That'll come first. I've been in touch with the MTA on all these issues. But that's something, if there's a real commitment for that, it is a lot of work, but it's doable. And when I heard you say you had 26 stations, I had no idea. 28th Street is a problematic one. I hear a lot of concerns about that. But all of these, the MTA by 2025 has to make the whole system accessible. The question is which stations will have priority. And I was able to establish that on 23rd Street, it was inaccessible. There are 5 subway stations, river to river, along 23rd, and only one on Park Avenue South had an elevator. And they agreed it was an inaccessible area, and approved 2 avenues, 7th and 8th Avenue for elevators. Just sharing that. And I'd be glad to work with anyone and share with you the report that I did send it into the MTA based on their guidelines. They do have, as I said, a brochure of 3-4 pages long, and I followed that with ridership, population density, ethnicity, age, disability. It was a lot of work, but we got the approval. I just wanted to share that.
Miriam, you and Jesse have been doing great work on 23rd Street. Do you happen to remember, because that was what I was mentioning earlier, that Nadler had talked about some funding that we might be able to get for this? Do you know if we're getting any of that?
The only funding that I knew about, and that I think is what was successful in 23rd is from the MTA. Beyond that, I don't know some of the issues that you were, other sources. But the MTA, by law, by 2055, has to make the whole system accessible. Disability Advocates won a lawsuit against the MTA. And the real issue is what stations will get priority. And you have to convince them that this is a station that needs an elevator because of the population, seniors, disability groups. And they have, as I said, a brochure, a guideline, which I did on my own and got a lot of support from community groups, Hudson Guild, the block associations, and I sent that in. And of course, I got support from Community Board 4, and especially Jesse, who was very committed and passionate about, working on this. And we did a rally in front and asked for 6th Avenue. I thought I was very smart because it's near Sellis Manor, which is a residence for the blind, that they would approve that first. But they actually approved the stations that were easiest to retrofit with elevators and were cheaper to do. And that's how 7th Avenue and 8th Avenue got first commitment. But eventually everything, 30 years, and that was what I kept saying, I don't want to wait 30 years, we want it now. And they were listening. And we did get a lot of community support, and Eric Botcher was very, very helpful on everything that we tried to do, and co-sponsored the rally that Jesse and I did, which was, lended authority and credence, and that was a big help too. Eric is the person to really work with. He's really committed to accessibility and has worked with me on a lot of other issues. We're working on the bus stops now, and seeing which bus stops need seats and shelter. And we started with 23rd Street, but now Jesse asked all Transportation Committee members to be responsible for a different avenue, 6th Avenue, 7th Avenue, 8th Avenue. And in the September meeting, they're supposed to report back on which stations need improvement on those avenues. Eric also is working with me on that, because the DOT said that they are short-staffed, and they acknowledged our request on 23rd, but they don't have a date to look at the issues and examine each one. So I said, let's get Eric involved. And right now, as we speak, a letter is being written by Eric's office, and he's trying to get other electeds to sign on, Tony and Brad, and send that to the DOT to push them to move ahead. So I just wanted to share all that.
Yeah, appreciate that. Thank you, Miriam. We don't have anybody else doing. That's it. Okay, so let's move on to this, teams and topics thing. If people like paper, I have paper. That was the second email I sent you. Yeah, it's a link, so hopefully that'll work. Otherwise, we'll-
Consider it alpha.
yeah.
Anybody else? Are these single shoots or?
Single, yeah. And I still have 4 slices of pizza.
If no one wants one, I'll eat another.
Should I have?
You're growing young man.
It's like our bylaws, everyone should get to speak once before anyone.
Exactly, we gotta get it. Second.
Basic fairness. Oop, that worked. Okay, so we can send around, I wanted to be careful about how we edit this until we've all had a chance to look at it. But I mean, we could just make the link available at some point so that everybody, we were trying to use this as kind of a progress document also, so things went on it, some things came off it. You can see on the right-hand side, there's document folders were set up for each team. So that we could, if stuff came into the office, we could just put it right into the folder. So we were trying to use this as a way of getting organized. I think one of the other issues that was raised when we set this up was that there was just so much email traffic. As groups of people started working together and, we were feeding into that and documents were being distributed, it just turned into kind of an email nightmare. So we were trying to see if we could use this kind of summary document as a home base for, topic by topic. So anyway, this is a little bit of the dog's breakfast because we just kept adding to it and adding to it. And if we had meetings that happened or something actually got passed, then we crossed it off, but we kept it along on the list. So that's kind of what you're seeing now. And then I took the names of people off the list that aren't on the committee anymore, but I didn't add people's names into it. So we figured we'll talk here about both, what the way we've grouped the topics, some of which, like Broadway, we can really rethink, but who wants to be on which teams and what topics are of interest to people, and are there things that you've thought of that we don't have on this yet?
Well, if I may, David, Christopher and I were invited to meet with Damu and Andrew from Broadway Linear Project on Wednesday, the 5th at 6. He's still going to be in Italy, so if there's somebody in this committee new would like to get involved with Broadway Vision, Broadway Linear, so we'd be willing to. We'd be welcome, so let me know if you might be.
Which date is that, sorry?
That'll be a week from Wednesday, so September 3rd, Wednesday the 3rd at 6 o'clock, and we'll probably meet by that little Flatiron Corner Park at 23rd and Broadway.
I think I can do it.
Yeah, okay, great. So
I can go through the mobility group if you want.
Yeah, we'll start at the top and work our way through.
We'll actually start from the bottom of that group.
Okay.
Central Park Drives, the Park Conservancy did it. They never came back to us. They never asked, as
Yeah.
far as I know, for input, so it's done. We have essentially no say. $5 city bikes, unless you've heard, I've never heard back from the people who are promoting that, so I assume that's either that they're doing it administratively now, or that it's a dead issue.
On the Central Park Drives, we sort of distinguished between what was kind of soft work and what was hard work. Do you know, did they do the soft stuff, but they haven't really done any hardscaping changes yet?
They stripped the entire drive down to the subgrade.
Right.
And then repaved everything.
Right.
And in some places, they painted lines. They haven't done the color paint yet. They haven't raised anything. I don't know if they're still planning to do that.
So they didn't change.
They didn't remove traffic signals, some of that kind of stuff.
They turned off a couple of traffic
Yes,
signals.
so they didn't remove them.
Right, they're still there, but they're not helping anybody cross the street because they're turned off.
Right.
Yeah, so that kind of stuff, which we actually
I don't know if we gave input to them, but we did give input on that. They just ignored that.
Okay, so is the proposal to just cross it off, or is there
I
something
mean,
we
they're
should?
gonna do what they're gonna do and they don't really care what we say.
Yeah,
You know, the Conservancy is pretty clear about that. They don't care about it.
okay.
So we can make a stink and say, you know, this is.
Well, that's why I said,
stuff.
you know, on this, if it's
Yeah.
paint, go ahead and do whatever you want to, but if you're really
Well,
gonna
more than
start
paint.
changing the layout of the road and changing signals, we'd like to see what it
They did
is.
change it.
Yeah,
So
okay. City bike, yeah, I mean, I think that's just gonna
that's how it's done.
hang out for a while.
Smart First Micro Hub, you know, Tiffany was handling that by herself, so I can't tell you, but I thought the pilot cases are already in place. Or there was a pilot case already.
Well, the smart curb.
Yeah.
That's all happening up in CB7,
Okay,
so that's been moving forward. They were looking for feedback from us on the micro hub stuff. So you know, smart curb is how do we allocate the uses that happen at the curb? Parking, delivery, you know, you name it. Dining out, park space in some cases. So smart curbs was looking for systems to help, you know, arrive at those allocations, but also then once you've done it, how do you manage it, the signage, who gets to use it? So they're doing a test run of that in the Upper West Side. And it hasn't, that piece of it has not moved out anywhere. I mean, you can read about it. There've been articles about it fairly frequently because it rubs up against a lot of people, mostly people with cars. Micro hubs was this attempt to get the Amazons of the world to stop just like taking over a bunch of parking spots and using it to pull stuff out of the back of big trucks and put it in the back of little trucks. So they, DOT started to identify specific locations where it wouldn't interfere with retail, it wouldn't interfere with residential buildings, kind of all over the city. And then they rolled out a few test cases where they're just starting to do it, but they came to us and asked us to identify, they had 3 or 4 ideas. But then they asked us to identify areas that we thought would be good for micro hubs, and that's where it's at. So we'll have to get Tiffany plugged back, but you know, again, if that's something you're interested in working on, the output on that is gonna be a little bit of a survey of how it's currently being done in our district. And, you know, are there other locations where it would, you know, better serve the purpose and not piss off as many people?
And do we know how that relates to the hard bins that Department of Sanitation is putting?
No, I mean, that's just one of the curb uses.
Yeah.
You know,
Some of
part
them
of
have
smart
been
curb.
installed.
Yeah, I'm not aware of any where we
One,
are.
It was at Madison and 28th southeast corner. Where there have been some,
And it's in
you
the
know,
curb.
meal strips and it's in the curb and these are the
Right.
new hard metal bins.
Right, so it shows up in smart curbs as one of the many demands on curb space, but yeah.
Would we expect to get any kind of notification from sanitation or anybody?
Well, then I mean, it was kind of issued as a policy that buildings above a certain number of units were gonna be required. I forget the timing. And then, no, I mean, we wouldn't ordinarily see like individual buildings. No, you know, the policy got issued. I suppose if we disagreed with the policy, we could weigh in on that, but. You know, yeah, so, you know, I think parking spaces are gonna disappear. And it's, you know, the mad scramble for all the other uses that wanna happen at the curb. So I think that's an interesting topic, but we seem to be at kind of a in-between point on all of it. We're really waiting to see what happens on the Upper West Side. We volunteered to kind of be the next victim because we're kind of the opposite of CB7 in a lot of ways. They're high residential, you know, a lot less commercial space other than street retail, and we're the opposite. So, you know, we put out the word that if they were looking for the next phase, we were interested, but didn't really go anywhere because they're not looking for the next phase yet. But the micro hub thing, you know, we have the ability to provide specific input on that.
I saw just anecdotally, I was in Astoria and saw some of those hard trash that were installed by the city, the big ones. And I saw graffiti from the restaurant that was there that said, now where are we supposed to put our trash?
Yeah.
Because the entire front end was blocked.
Yeah.
But that's one spot, goes along the whole street.
All one big tuggle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So somebody got to allocate this stuff now.
Yeah.
The proposals for electric microinverter battery device swapping and charging, so that's just the street ones that the city, they're already out there.
Yeah, well, that's why it's crossed off.
Okay. Bike lane safety, there, it says Josh to draft, to circulate.
I
Intro.
think it was dropped into the folder, but,
Oh,
I don't think anything, we haven't really seen anything all that specific. on
nothing
this
new
yet.
is on that.
Yeah.
There's some old bills that are dangling around.
Yeah, part of the whole thing that's, it has to go through state in terms of registration, licensing, all this stuff.
Separate, so licensing does not, or registration of e-bikes doesn't have to go to the state, the state authorization that legalized e-bikes back in 2018, 2019, gave the city the authority and control to do whatever we want.
So is there
So the
anything in front of
council
the,
can do it.
is there anything in front of the council?
There's a bunch of bills that are sitting,
Oh, okay,
that they're essentially the speakers talking.
okay, but you're watching those?
I check them every once in a while, but most of them have, well, the main one about registration has the majority of the council support, but you need 2/3 support in order to get it to a vote, and the current speaker will come to a vote. So, it was basically a bill which would require e-bikes in the city to have some identification on them, so that if it gets an accident, if it hits somebody, hits a pedestrian, that the person could see, could identify who did them. Right now, that's not required at all for any e-bike, for general e-bikes, and city bikes have like a little number that's rubbed off on most of them, so just warn them. Not deliberately, warn them.
I mean, I think the whole 18-mile-an-hour thing kind of trumped a lot of that. That got launched out, it happened,
Yeah,
and now a lot of people are like, oh, okay, well, that's the solution, and which is
and we'll
not.
see.
Yeah.
This is a tough issue.
But the 18 only applies to city bikes. Well, that was good. Say,
If they moved it from 18 to.
Oh,
city bike,
yeah,
but
yeah.
only city bike.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But you can buy an e-bike down, on Ninth Avenue that goes 45, 50 miles an hour.
And then, Samir, you know a lot of it, there are like 6 different categorizations between DOT and DMV. This is
It's all
both,
DMV.
it's all, but
it's a
DOT
state
also
law.
has categorization on the,
For e-bikes, there are 3 different categorizations, and then there's, I think, 2 or 3 for mopeds.
Yep.
I think 1 or maybe 2 for scooters. The DOT has a good chart on them.
But the categories were created by the state
right,
when they legalized them, but
Right.
but DOT
right.
publishes it so that you can tell, but they're kind of meaningless because you can't look at an e-bike and say category 1, category 2, category 3.
And the whole bike culture is totally different from what it was 5 years
20
ago. Exactly.
I mean, the issue on this one that we discussed was like, how far out in front of this do we really want to be? Are we gonna be like making policy here and then go try and sell it? As opposed to what's going on now, which is just kind of a swirl of different policies. Nothing has really come to the forefront yet. I think we basically felt like, let's wait and see if something starts having some momentum where it's worth putting the effort into it to look into it, so.
Is that in your,
That was
The
in
bailiwick?
the bailiwick of what Tick and I were working on. It kind of got.
Cause I think that's a really good place for, further discussion and debate. I mean, because, the whole biking culture is, totally different, we've created this whole new industry of the deliveries to these guys in order to make any kind of living, have to go as fast as possible. Police are not capable or even interested, we think, in terms of, going through red lights, going the wrong way, being on the sidewalk, everything else, so you get to that. I think that's really something worse. Well,
We have
it's
a
really
lot
up
of
to
new
you
people,
and
and
or not.
we have any kind of new creative ideas, that would be awesome, because basically what we came up with was registration as well. I mean, what the city's come up with is registration. One idea, so you can identify a culprit, hit and run on the sidewalk or something like that. And
The other is enforcement, which is not fun. There's no funding for police to get on, to get e-bikes so that they can chase down the guy on an e-bike. They can't chase him in a car because they'll kill people. And they know that, and it's not really.
Is there a speed limit for the e-bikes or just for city
Their
bike?
traffic, no, so
Yeah.
if it's 20, they can't go more than 20. If it's 25, they can't go more than 25, but you can buy something that goes
Yeah,
45, 50.
Right, but that wouldn't be an e-bike, according to.
Right.
No, and that's a category 3 e-bike.
yeah. See,
Or
no,
the highest
Category 3
category.
is up to 25 miles an hour.
Yeah.
Above
No.
that, it's just illegal.
It's illegal to go
Right.
above 25 miles an hour. It is legal to sell it in the city of New York, even if it goes 45 miles an hour.
there's so much complexity here and confusion, because I don't even think we have stats on this. I mean, I think we could fairly say that there's definitely an upswing in terms of accidents.
I just looked up 2023, 30 cycling related fatalities with 23 involving e-bikers.
So that's injuries
2 years
to
ago.
bikers, right?
Those are fatalities, yeah.
Right.
Fatalities to bikers.
Right.
So that's really a traffic, like a car thing. So until the end of 2024, there was no place on the state vehicle and traffic reports to report. A bike was considered a vehicle. So if a bike ran down a person or a car or a truck ran down a person, it was still considered a vehicle accident and it was reported as a vehicle accident. There were no separate statistics unless you like went and looked in the paper and saw, bike ran down person. Now there's a place to put it on the form. I don't know if the city has updated its forms, but the state authorized it, mandated.
And the likelihood is that we are getting good, stats on fatalities. But in terms of, everyday, near misses or somebody getting knocked down or
Yeah.
some kind of property damage or all that. In my view, being out on the streets all the time, it's on the rise, but I don't know if anybody is doing any kind of assessment on it.
There are no real stats. And it's very hard to report because, some unidentifiable
Yeah.
e-bike knocked me down. Now I'm down on the ground. How do I identify them? The camera can't tell,
Yeah, and if they issue an identification tag, where do the resources come from to do?
Well, then
all
the
that?
cameras could pick it up.
Yeah.
That's the whole idea. Just like a car hit.
Yeah, but then the city, I guess, rather than the state, is responsible for managing the registrations, right?
That would be a city registration. Yeah, it'd
Yeah.
just be a registration fee that pays for it.
Right.
I don't know if this has legs or not, but anecdotally over the last 2 months, around the Herald Square subway station on Sixth Avenue, because that's where I catch the train, I've seen police stopping.
Yeah, I saw some
Yeah.
statistic that it's up significantly.
And I talked to them and then they said.
There's a bigger push going on,
From
yeah.
Commissioner Tisch
Yep.
to do so,
Good.
So if you're interested in, like I heard you saying you ride your bike, if this is a topic that you're interested in, then you could join Joel and Tiffany in that group. But I mean, the idea is, if not at the end of this session, but at some point, people should get in touch with us and say, here's the grouping that I'm interested in or topic that I'm interested in. Okay, is there anything that's not on here that should be on here or?
So 3 days ago, Waymo got approved by the city to test
Right.
autonomous vehicles here. What kind of work would we be able to track and what's the timing on us opining on that development?
It's a good question. I mean, a lot of times it's really our role to relay public comment up to whoever is DOT, the responsible agency for that. So, to the extent we wanted to have a hearing and get public comment on something like that, we could. I mean, in that case, maybe we want to wait until it's been in operation for a while and get people's feedback on it. But yeah, we couldn't have a role in that. We'd have to define kind of what it is. We would talk to, as I said, if it's DOT, that's the appropriate agency, we would talk to them. But yeah, it's our opportunity to go out to the public and say, all right, this thing's been operating. raise your hand if you have a comment on it, and then we assemble that. Pass a resolution and pass it on to the electeds and then to DOT.
And in that ruling, I think they require that there's a human in the driver's seat.
The Waymos that I've seen being tested, there's a driver,
There's a human in the car.
in the testing that I've seen
Yeah, yeah.
out here.
I think that was probably required.
Have you seen it here or have you been in
Yeah.
Phoenix or wherever?
I mean, I was in San Francisco a few months back, I took one. I think
Oh, yeah?
it's amazing, but I saw one on 12th Street and 6th Avenue.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
I saw one on 28th Street on the weekend, very early in the morning.
this was in the morning too, maybe like
Yeah.
7 AM.
Alright,
Yeah, yeah.
cool.
They're only approved like 8 cars, so you guys.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Great numbers.
Yeah, so we could add that to the list here just to keep track of.
Says, just so we know, they're only allowed to test in Manhattan and downtown Brooklyn until late September 2025. So maybe we could, I don't know, opine after, maybe people would.
Oh.
Yeah, I think it would be interesting once it's been out there and we can act as a way of kind of collecting
Oh, so
public
do
comment.
they have to be done at the end of September?
That's what this says.
So then maybe we should
Oh.
think about a hearing in October because while it's fresh.
Yeah. Oh, so I thought you were saying the restriction applies until September,
No,
or you're saying the whole thing is, oh, really? Okay.
It's a test run.
I think one thing,
Yeah.
that could be worth pursuing is sort of pushing for increased data transparency when it comes to that pilot, because obviously Google is going to make it seem as if it was a huge success. And kind of, likely skew the numbers in their press release to reflect the outcome that they want. But obviously, there's gonna be way more data under the hood that they might not currently be required to share with the city and the public, but they could be pushed to share as some sort of requirement for them to continue pursuing this.
That's a really good point because they decided a decade ago that the automatic cars are safer than the human driven cars.
All right, well, we'll keep track of this. I mean, maybe this is something we would do in October if we think we can get the word out, In order to have public comment, we need the public to participate. So we would have to be able to get the word out that this is something we want to look into and get people's feedback.
Is that data that DOT could be entitled to? Like, if it's not in their contract now, that,
I think hypothetically, like how many near misses were there, or that sort of thing that they might not currently be required to report.
in my recollection, DOT has never done a pilot program that did automatically become a permanent program in all the years I've been on this committee, so I'm curious if we could get that now or ask for it now.
Yeah.
To be ahead of
I
the
mean,
curve.
do you have a feel for types of things we'd be interested in
I
seeing?
mean, definitely near misses, I feel like, especially, once, or in addition to that, how many times the human driver has had to take over the wheel. Because obviously, once this is no longer a pilot, hypothetically, if it rolls out as a permanent program, there's not going to be a human driver. So knowing, how many times that person saved the day currently, yeah.
And all these vehicles would have LiDAR. So would there be data that's being processed when something comes extremely close to that vehicle or the vehicle gets extremely close to something else?
Presumably, yeah, I'm not sure, yeah.
Okay.
But yeah, human driver, disengagements, yeah, yeah. Near misses, that sort of thing.
Cool. So the same thing as what we do with airplanes.
Right.
All right.
Well, Waymo has its impact report that has some data parameters we can look into it later.
Okay. Oh, that's you were able to find that on,
Some things that I could-
okay.
we'd have to. Screen. Yeah.
David, can you tell us something about Penn or Port Authority?
Well, let's just, we'll,
I
we'll go top to bottom.
You were concluding.
yeah,
Oh,
no,
okay, good.
Broadway. I mean, you know, I think a lot of this is now a matter of sort of tracking progress, like, you know. There is supposed to be a public design meeting. We're gonna want to talk to DOT about what that is and get the word out about that. The Herald and Greeley Square reconstruction, that's been going on for quite a while. I don't think we've ever had a presentation on what it is. So now we've seen all the different pieces of Broadway, but we haven't seen what's happening in the bow tie. So that's something we would go back to DOT on. And then just, you know, which they probably won't know for a little while, but what's the overall project schedule? When can we expect to, you know, be involved in design review and construction status and all the rest of them? You know, this pathway to Broadway Linear Park, I mean, I think, you know, here it's kind of the discussions we've had before about Broadway vision is the template. But to the extent that people want it to be greener, which apparently happened on the 38th to 40th piece, what's gonna happen in the future? I mean, I think that's an opportunity for the Broadway Linear Park people to kind of take a closer look and make, you know, specific recommendations about, well, what would they do differently? How would they green it up in a different way than what DOT has
And in the
proposed?
meeting with James Mattman, president of Flatiron Nomad Partnership, we talked about having public meetings at some of the, you know, maybe at Rizzoli, for example, but in other places,
Right.
so that, you know, our neighbors could come in and comment on this.
Okay. Well, I think that's gonna end up being built in to the whole Broadway vision construction process, but that's something we're gonna talk to DOT about. But I think the issue here is that it was very theoretical for a long time, and I think it did its job in that it got people to think that the answer didn't have to be, you know, a roadway with some trees. That it could be more of a park with restricted road access. And I think that's the direction it's going in. But if they want to have more specific, or if they want to have input, it has to be more specific input. So. School streets. I mean, this is one. So this is a program that DOT runs that blocks off public streets during school hours, so that can be used for outdoor play space. There are 2 or 3 of them in our district. And we were looking for a way to kind of get the word out and broaden it, like, let's do as much of this as we possibly can. Who was the group that we met with? Transalt or something?
It wasn't Transalt, but it was another group that had been working with them.
Oh, open, yeah.
What was it, Sammy?
Open plans.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, and
So-
yeah.
So we met with Open Plans about, because they have a school streets coordinator. And we got involved in a discussion about sort of, you know, you go first, no, you go first. Where they wanted us to pass a resolution that said, we love open school streets. And, you know, we should do as many of them as humanly possible and then turn it over to them to go do their thing and get the word out. And we were like, no, we would prefer to kind of, there's only, I think, 12 or 13 schools in our district. We would prefer to sort of do the homework on these schools, contact the schools and see how many of them are interested, sort of serve it up then. And so, no, we didn't do that piece of it and they didn't, they dropped it.
They did.
So,
Is that somewhere where an intern would be?
yeah, I think anybody who's interested in the topic could contact the schools, go look, contact the schools.
Yeah.
You know, see what their interest is, and then we can go to DOT at that point and say, all right, here are the 5 schools that are interested, and we'd really like to push these. As opposed to now where it's up to sort of the school parents have been the ones who have been pushing the issue. One by one. So, yeah, I would love, you know, if somebody's interested in that topic and essentially would go and look at the 12 schools and figure out, you know, which ones make sense. And then we'll package that up into a resolution and talk to DOT.
I'll continue to help. Is there somebody who, with children, who'd like to participate in that?
I do that.
Yeah.
Also, a question or comment. I know that one of the mayoral candidates was running, he ran on a platform of bringing school streets to every single street. So maybe it's worth waiting until after the election to like really get digging, because if he is elected, then if he wants to do it everywhere anyways, and there's no
point in us doing
Right.
the survey.
Right, I guess, I mean, I think it's still the kind of local knowledge of what the needs of
Yeah.
the individual schools are, at some point.
It
Somebody's gonna
probably
have to look
wouldn't
at
take
that.
a lot of time or effort just to figure out the schools and the streets.
Yeah,
we're
that was,
talking
I
about.
felt like that was the
So if we
low
got
hanging
know that
fruit part
exactly.
of this.
So
yeah.
like, yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. We could go through that, exactly. If we could just figure out exactly the schools, their addresses and the streets involved, that would be great.
Yeah,
This for all, like high school too?
I think,
Any
though,
place
I
with
mean, the
kids.
examples I've seen have
Yeah.
all been more like elementary schools
Yeah.
that need outdoor play area, but I think that, if there's a reasonable proposal for using it.
Yeah, I think it's for the elementary schools, but definitely a focus, not
Yeah.
just for the outdoor play, but just the dropping off.
Yeah.
Right,
And like picking up and the
Yep.
scrum
Exactly.
that exists, you don't want cars necessarily. Speeding through.
yeah, well, if you're interested in doing that, then
I'll do it.
that'd be great.
I'll do it.
Okay,
Does that include private schools?
yes,
It has to, we don't have 12 public. schools.
yeah,
Like
the list
three-
is
three or
in the
four.
folder that's in the. That's in that, in the spreadsheet.
Yeah,
We'll get the link out, and then you can
Okay.
just pick it up.
Yeah.
Yeah, so this last item, so Assemblymember Simone came out, I wanna say around Christmas time and made a big pronouncement about, doing some kind of open street at the bottom, but like between 34th and 35th, I guess, was it? 35th and 36th, maybe. So he made the announcement, and then it turns out there were like 1,000 issues. They came to us and said they wanted to have a public session on it. And it turns out that really nobody had done the real homework on this thing yet. So either, we feel like we should jump into it with the assembly member. And try and push that forward. I think it's kind of getting subsumed in Broadway Vision. Because Broadway Vision is gonna cover this whole zone. So at this point, either there's nothing to talk about. That's my guess. I can't think of an alternative.
I wonder how it relates to safe streets, that we just, concluded weekend before last, those summertime street
Oh,
closures.
yeah.
that
No, I
we had.
mean, he wanted a permanent closure of, I think it was 35th to 36th.
Have we have any public responses to safe streets, those closings? I mean, is it very, very popular and
Yeah, I mean, if you see people that participate, yeah. I think it's very popular. I haven't heard.
The only negative thing I've heard at all is a couple of farmers trying to get into the green market at Union Square, being told in an intersection you can't come in. And I think that's just a matter of coordination with Grow Green NYC.
Right. Okay, I'm gonna take that one off the list and we'll just deal with it, as part of the Broadway Vision stuff.
Yeah.
There
Okay,
was some objection to that. Charles, who used to be on this committee, said there were some disabled people.
access issues.
There was access issues, there was people with vision issues had problems with the way they were set up.
right,
I don't remember the details.
okay,
Oh, I think because basically when it's open streets, they don't adhere to traffic lights, as I understand. I mean, they're just going down Park Avenue. Yeah.
well, is that something that somebody would be interested in pursuing, the accessibility issues of summer streets? Well, I'll put it on the list.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
They can do it.
There are
Okay.
enough disability groups that we can, contact and see if they consider it a major issue.
All right, so next up is all the pedestrian experience stuff, so Shed the Sheds got done. The street blade naming policy, Marissa told me that she's gotten a ton of calls from both constituents and electeds that they're getting a lot of incoming on this, and they feel like we should really weigh in on it. So, so this is when somebody wants to rename a street, co-name a street after some, famous dead person.
Joni Mitchell.
She's not dead.
People too.
Is
Not
that a
dead.
requirement? It has to be a dead person?
I think that's effectively what it's been.
Okay.
Yeah,
We can
But-
come up with
Narrows
our
it
own.
down.
Yeah, we can come up with our own.
That narrows it down.
Yeah,
So other community board, so just to give some quick.
Yeah,
May I
please.
specifically?
yeah.
So, we used to have a lot of these in the nineties. I wasn't there at the time, but in the nineties, we used to have a lot of these. And what we decided to do in the 2000s, early 2000s, was say no more. We're done. Moratorium. Then I forget the details of what happened, but then I think we had to change it to an indefinite pause. So instead of saying no, we're saying like maybe later.
Maybe someday.
And so it was fine for a while, and then in 2019, I think, apparently Eric Botcher, I guess, was the council member, and he was getting a bunch of inbound, or maybe 2020, wanted to do some more of these co-namings and was asking us what our opinion is. And we said, well, we have this resolution we passed 20 years ago that says we don't want any of them.
Yeah.
And so then we just sent that, and we reaffirmed it as a board. We said this is our official position, even though it was 20 years old. But with basically saying it as if it is our current position signed by the current chair and the current chair of the committee at the time. And I don't think that held very much weight, because we're like, this is 20 years old, like, you should look at this again. And so we've talked about bringing this up again. We could, have a discussion and then say, actually, we still want to have the same policy of saying no. There's a concern that if we do that, then they're just gonna do it anyways, and we lose our leverage. If we're gonna say no to everything, similar to what happened with the cannabis shops. And what other community boards have done is come up with a very strict set of guidelines. They say, here are the rules. If you match all these rules, then you can come to our committee and we'll talk about it. And so we could do that as well. Or we could have no policy and just have them come and just ad hoc. Just be like yes to that one and no to the other one. I don't recommend that one, that policy.
And it's like bus stops.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
so,
Samir, was the rationale difficulty finding the actual address?
No.
No,
nobody
nobody
uses
uses it as it's a code naming deal.
So it's still, I mean, it's not the difficulty that you have with things like, 4 Madison Square Park.
No.
Where the hell is it?
no, I think it's just, we didn't want to deal with it. It was too confusing, or we thought it was too confusing. And, with a lot of things, when you name them after someone, maybe hundreds of years later, you realize that they were maybe not the best person in the current light. So maybe it's not worth doing them at all for humans. Maybe pets is fine.
Not Joni Mitchell.
And so, I mean, I don't know what our opinions are in 200 years. But so, I think one thing we could do and what we should do is just come up with a policy. Similar to the bylaws revisions, we should just, in my opinion, we should just look through the other community boards, see what they've done. I know that community board 4 has a policy, community board 6 is a policy. We really could just adopt one of their policies if we want. We don't have to think that hard about it.
Do they have conflicting policies or they?
I don't know. I haven't looked at them.
It would be nice if all the boards have a similar.
Yeah, but I know that in the most recent one for CB6, I believe was near the UN was Jamal Khashoggi Way. I don't know if that ended up being implemented or not.
I don't think it's got to it.
Yeah, but they had a policy that was like they have to be dead, for example.
He is
He is dead,
membered to.
quite, yeah, notoriously quite dead. Yeah, so anyways, that's the background.
Okay, well, this one has moved up. I think part of this also is, you mentioned Councilman Botcher. I mean, I think they get the incoming on this and they don't want to deal with it first. They would rather have us, hold the hearing and have the rules, and then they can say, I'm just doing what they said. Rather than them having to take the flak. So it's moved up in priority, so it'd be good to get somebody who is willing to do what Samir described and look at what these other policies are and just come up with a policy that we could adopt that's similar to that.
So right now it's in Anchor and Annie's bailiwick and they're not here, so we can't see.
Well, I mean, Anker is treasurer and spends most of his time doing that, so he kind of gets a buy on most of these things. He did some work on daylighting. Yeah, which we'll talk about next.
Yeah.
But yeah, it would be good to get somebody on the street blade naming thing. So I'll put that out there. The daylighting, I mean, we took this off because we did a resolution on it that was supportive of daylighting and we left it that way. And now there's, I think, a specific piece of legislation. I don't know that we have an opinion that's any different. I mean, I think we're still supportive. The debate is, you know, do you do it everywhere? Do you do it as a hardscape or, you know, I don't think our level of understanding or concern gets to that level. So I'm probably leaning towards.
Sorry, what is daylighting?
No, daylighting, sorry. So it's basically getting rid of parking spots that are adjacent to intersections so that drivers have better visibility of pedestrians getting off the curb. It isn't blocked by a parked car. So if you go to Hoboken, they have a 100% daylighting policy that they've had for like 10 years. And they've had 0 pedestrian interactions ever since that happened. And so there's been a push to do that in New York. New York has a lot more intersections than Hoboken does, and they're all different. So the latest was basically a city council intro to just do it everywhere. And now they're having a debate about what that really means.
Yeah, and one of the things that complicated is it is not just cars parked on the sidewalk, it's all the street vendors and everything else that come right up to this intersections, sometimes right into the pedestrian crossings. Is there any state input on that, or can that safely be done?
Well, it's a state law that you have to do it except for the 5 boroughs. So the city council bill is essentially, we will no longer be an exception to the state law.
Okay, it's just the state doesn't have to take action, the council does.
Yeah,
Okay. And is that legislation held up at the speaker's desk?
I think it's mostly the technical discussion about, you know, is it a $5 billion program to do this? However many thousands of intersections there are. There was articles, you know, probably in the Post about how many parking spots we'd lose. So then you're just back in the scrum of who gets to use the curb and for what. So I mean, I feel like we said our piece, which is why we crossed it off. And I don't know that we have more to add at this point, unless
We
somebody.
were 100% there. I mean, we voted. a
Yeah.
resolution in favor, yeah.
Yeah, so, okay, I'll leave it off. Sidewalk expansion, I think this got dealt with in MSMX for the most part. This was about sort of 7th and 8th Avenue permanently widening the sidewalk, so we'll have to see what comes out of MSMX. And tree planting, urban forest master plan, and this was added by a member who then left the board, so. And it's a botcher thing. There's legislation that he passed recently that supports.
And
So-
he set a goal, and I think he's now saying he's like 60%, 80% close to the planting goal, something.
Well, it helped that I think there's 380 tree commitment in MSMX, so that helps. Yeah, so I think we're gonna take that one off the list as well.
And there are a lot of empty, what do you call it, tree,
It's,
yes.
okay. So the pedestrian experience has gotten narrowed down to basically street blade naming. So we might have to rename that, the street blade naming committee. See, that would be a good one. You could work on it,
And I
get
was
it
thinking that
done,
we-
and then,
I was thinking we'd want to expand on the pedestrian
Yeah,
experience.
I know, we need to find some new topics for that.
It's parks and environment.
Well, yeah, that's further, I took that off completely.
Yeah.
That used to be a category.
Yeah.
We can skip over the next gen transportation. So George is a longtime public member of this committee who worked like 30, 40 years ago on a whole bunch of proposals for improving the transportation network. And he would love for us to schedule a date for him to come in and sort of show us what his work was. He weighs in every once in a while on Penn Station.
We might just want to unscramble the acronym.
IREM. I forget what it's. But yeah, at some point we'll schedule something with George and he'll explain, you know, as I said, that a lot of these are concepts that were floated about how to link the whole transportation network in the New York area. So meetings to arrange with staff, I mean, the big one on the bottom is that we now have a new Manhattan Borough Commissioner. We didn't have one for a while. And what we'd like to do is pull together sort of a list of all of the things that we would like to work with DOT on. And go see her and say, this is how, you know, CD5, how we see ourselves coordinating with DOT. So, I mean, I think at least initially it'll be myself and Samir.
And are you two thinking that in respect to this, it would be only a transportation issue, it would not involve any of the land use?
Well, what do you
In this
mean?
conversation with the borough commissioner?
Land use in terms of what?
Just, you know, the subway, you know, the other things that, you know, that we're concerned with the access and stuff. I mean, is there any overlap in your mind with that?
Well, you'll see further down, we're talking about some outreach to MTA.
Okay,
To sort of develop the relationship with them that we are developing with DOT.
yeah,
So I think it really splits out based on what the agencies are responsible for. So, you know, DOT, we're gonna go in and talk to them about everything on our list. And particularly the reporting stuff, like hearing regularly from them on what the status of a lot of the stuff is, because then we get calls from, you know, our constituents that want to know, like, well, what's going on with X, Y, and Z? You passed a resolution 2 years ago, nothing's happened. So we want to be able to have those kinds of conversations with them. And I think we'd like to do the same thing with MTA. Maybe that gets to your issue. I mean, pure land use, that belongs with the land use committee. So. Yeah.
You wanna know what IRM is?
Oh, yeah, did you look
oh,
up?
good.
It's IRM.org, the Institute for Rational Urban Mobility.
Right.
George, Rational Urban Mobility, George talked a lot about the idea that we have to have, or talks a lot about, a comprehensive plan for all the street improvements, mass transit improvements, other transit improvements in the city, and that you can't really do one without the other because they all tie together.
Yeah.
And that's part of what they talk about in there.
And so many cities around the world are so far ahead of us on exactly that.
Well, I think he, like the through running concepts and how Gateway would work. I mean, he was working on this stuff,
Long
you know,
time.
decades ago.
And that's pedestrian experience.
So, okay. And then the bottom thing, yeah, well, the bottom piece is just like topics that we kept throwing on here that we never really assigned to anybody. So, we can walk through those. You know, a few of them got done. A lot of them are open and some of them we've done nothing on. So I think the idea would be, you know, let's talk about these, assign them to groups, you know. I think we have to kind of redo how these groups work a little bit.
And they're all pretty big projects.
Yeah, and they're all kind of very slowly kind of working their way through the system. So like Union Square Master Plan, we had a meeting with the bid, I mean, 2 years ago, maybe. And they were awaiting funding, but now there is kind of a funding thing going on, at least for the design. I think they've now rounded up public and private money of around $5 million to start developing a master plan around Union Square. And we don't want to like wait till it's done to be involved. So I know Libby, the chair of Parks and Public Space and Environment, whatever it's called now, has had ongoing contact with them about kind of staying in touch with that process. But we, you know, we do too.
This is something I'm strongly interested in.
Okay,
Yeah, same.
okay.
I
So,
talked to Libby about it too.
oh, you did?
Yep.
Yeah, I just don't know. I mean, it's a planning process. They're gonna issue an RFP and raise their money and get the planning process started, and we would like to be, you know, kind of party to that to some extent.
Are you also on Parks, Robert?
I'm not.
Oh, okay. Anybody here on Parks?
I'm on Parks as well. yeah.
Ah, okay. And you are too?
Yeah.
Okay, okay.
So that's that one. Future of Fifth, I don't know, did that happen when you guys joined, or was that before?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yes.
Okay, so I mean, that's, $400 million got allocated by the city. We saw that conceptual proposal and now it's, where the asphalt meets the road. So we passed a resolution. There were some issues we raised that we got some pushback from the Fifth Avenue Association, but that process is moving forward. So that's really more one of kind of tracking progress and, assigning it to one of these groups, maybe that's pedestrian experience. PennSWAG, so PennSWAG was the working advisory group, and it was community boards, but it was also a bunch of railroad industry people, and it reached up to Westchester and Jersey and Connecticut, anybody that had an interest, Long Island, anybody that had an interest in Penn Station. It was a group of around 50 people. We met pretty frequently, I want to say monthly for a while the whole process was getting underway. And the idea was that this was their opportunity to sort of bounce things off a group of people that were focused on transportation issues. I think it was also, political cover for them to be like, okay, this is what we're doing, and now you know. So,
Has there been a PennSWAG meeting since the administration said they're taking over the whole project?
no, there has not. And nobody knows. I mean, we got an email maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago that said PennSWAG's not dead. But it didn't say like what was gonna happen, and there's been some
Just
discussion.
tempting armed men to
Yeah.
facilitate.
I mean, I
the
think the
discussion.
answer is like everything now at the federal level, it's kind of floating around a little bit, but there's definitely. There's definitely progress because the NEPA process has started and they have a design contract out, and so I think there's a certain amount of momentum on this, but
And the
the
town.
SWAG has not met. Yeah, the tunnel's being built, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So it'd be good if something met the tunnel.
And run through it.
Yes.
Yeah.
And there's been a ton of discussion back and forth about through running and what that means. So I don't know that there's anything, right now I'm the rep on that. We'll see if there's a place for me to be a rep on. I don't know what's gonna happen with that. Penn CLIP. So this was, the CLIP stands for Community-Led Improvement Plan. And the idea was that as part of the Penn Station planning piece and what happens with MSG and the whole Vornado plan, the general project plan,
GPP, yeah.
GPP, that the state did, that there was a
Vornado.
role for us to look at the areas that weren't addressed by those. I have to say, probably 90% of it got dealt with MSMX. If you look at the map, there are sort of little bits and pieces where, we could think about whether stuff should be zoned differently or, west of 8th Avenue, in that kind of southwest quadrant, there's not much that's addressed by MSMX. So there is a potential planning effort for what happens to the areas that we haven't already dealt with. We haven't defined it yet. I mean, if somebody has a planning background and that's something that they're interested in, the first step would just be like, okay, let's just define where we would even look for this based on MSMX. If you lay the map over, like what areas haven't been addressed. And then we could start the process up again. I mean, we really went for it big time, and then MSMX started happening, and it really took the wind out of our sails. And then we had a lot of changes in who was working on it.
How granular would you want to get with this? Say, for example, the old Penn Hotel, the down.
But it wasn't meant to be like
Okay.
site by site. It
Right.
was meant to
And
be
how about-
like MSMX was,
Yeah,
like
about-
pick a geography.
So not like Music Street, 30th Street, what's gonna happen with that in respect to Penn Station?
Oh, well, a little bit because we were looking at it like an environmental impact statement. So there's a home for that issue in an EIS. And so, yes, we would be looking at historic resources and stuff like that.
Okay.
But yeah, I think it started with, let's try and draw lines around, what we think still needs to be dealt with. In our case, we're always under delivering housing. So is there something that we would do? You know, outside of what's already been rezoned? Which well, actually, there's a separate issue that's being dealt with in land use. But yeah. So, and here it's meant to kind of interact with what's going on with Penn Station and what's going on with the GPP.
Right, right.
So if somebody, as I said, it has sort of a more of a planning bent and is interested in kind of the big picture stuff, then I think that would be a kind of a good kind of medium term piece just to define it.
Yeah, 30th Street might be worth looking at.
Yeah.
Between 7th and 8th.
Residential parking permits, I mean, there was an introduction, an intro bill on this and nothing happened with it. It's another classic case of scrambling for the curb.
Also at the speaker's desk.
Who knows?
Right.
Yeah.
It has not come to the floor.
So Hoyam and Siegel was supporting that?
Yes, there was a joint, bill.
Surprising, okay.
Yeah, I think it started with a group in Brooklyn that wanted to do it related to congestion pricing.
Yeah.
And then it became a bigger issue.
Is it Simone or Joanne Simon?
No, it's Simone.
No,
So
it's
if not,
it's
it
Joanne
does
Simon,
happen.
I think, yeah.
Well, I would think Tony Simone.
Where's Joanne Simon?
She's in Brooklyn.
Downtown Brooklyn.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so that would make sense.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, as I said, it was really, you know, the concern in congestion pricing that everybody was just gonna like go to the edge of the congestion zone, park there. And then take the subway. I
Right.
don't think that's really been borne out, but it's raised the issue. And so now it's, you know, another thing.
And that actually, you know, big issue would coincide with that is the need for municipal parking lots at transit hubs that are, you know, semi-affordable. So we get people out of their cars, whether they're coming from another borough or from New Jersey, from Long Island, and get them on the train and the bus.
Yeah, so I mean, interesting that you raised that because it was studied in the EIS for congestion pricing.
Right.
And everybody expected the same thing, like we're gonna have to go and build a string of pearls around the congestion zone. Nothing. The EIS said that there is no demand for that. And that you might see marginal increases in parking in those kind of areas adjacent to the zone. But we haven't even really seen that in, you know, during the period since January.
Doesn't make a lot of sense for $9. You're gonna,
Yeah, you're gonna go to the hassle of
Yeah.
finding a parking spot
Yeah.
and then getting on the subway and,
I
yeah.
think the municipal parking lots are of the order of the group homes we were promised when they closed the psychiatric hospitals.
Yeah.
Never saw them.
Well, I also think nobody was gonna spend money on parking, like with everything that the city needs. Was the city gonna go and spend $1 billion on a bunch of parking garages? And the environmental impact statement said, well, nobody's gonna use them anyway. And we saw this up in White Plains, where they built a huge garage. There were huge garages in White Plains. They then went ahead and built a huge garage in North White Plains, and now it's all underutilized. You know, just the world changed because of COVID and people's commuting patterns have changed and they just don't need that much parking. So. If anything, we're going the other way, right? They, as part of City of Yes, they reduced the parking requirements for new development. So. I don't think there's any future for municipal parking in New York, but you know, could residential parking restrictions happen? I mean, maybe there are some neighborhoods that would really push
Doesn't
for it.
really limit on-street parking or raise, you know, the cost of on-street parking.
Well, I think it's gonna happen anyway because of all of this smart curb stuff. There's like so much need for curb access. And so then you have to make the decision about, okay, well then who gets to park at the end of that? And should it go to, you know, residential?
And there's gonna be so much inequity of that on streets that have beautiful multi-million-dollar brownstones.
Right. So anyway, so I don't know, again, that there's anything for us to do, like that bill, I don't think has gone anywhere. But again, if somebody is interested in this topic, you know, we could look into it. The next item, Vanderbilt Avenue, so this came up in land use. JP Morgan Chase is redoing the old Bear Stearns building, whatever, was that 47th and Vanderbilt?
Yeah.
So
Very narrow.
they're changing, yeah, but it's, I mean, it's sort of part of the character of the place. But they're changing that. They're creating a pedestrian arcade on Vanderbilt because of how much pedestrian traffic there is. But none of the other buildings are really capable of doing that. And so the question became, well, I mean, Vanderbilt is such an underutilized street in the first place. Does it make sense to pedestrianize it? Nobody that I know is actually talking about this yet, but we thought, you know, coming out of that,
Didn't we do a resolution on it?
no, we did the resolution on the land use
Right,
application.
That's what I mean.
Yes, yeah, but we didn't talk about Vanderbilt itself. So I do think there's an opportunity for us to sort of get out ahead of this. Work with DP and JP Morgan. This is about the avenue, not the building.
Does this mean here, totally pedestrianizing Vanderbilt?
Yeah, well, totally, I mean,
Well, yeah, I mean, there has to be an emergency. lane.
maybe a la Broadway, you know.
Oh,
so-
okay, I didn't realize that, that's good.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's the idea, one, specific idea. But it's also a case where this committee could sort of be a little more forward-looking on stuff instead of waiting to see issues come in, whether they come in from DOT or electeds or whatever. We could start identifying projects. I mean, and maybe the micro hub piece is kind of like that too, where we could sort of get out in advance of some of these issues and start identifying projects that we think make sense for our district.
Work on that.
So, so that's one that, coming out of the discussion on the land use question, it raised this question of pedestrianizing Vanderbilt.
Can we get a restaurant?
Yeah, get anything at this point, it's conceptual. Yeah. I don't think there are any subway entrances. Oh, wait, on,
No, there's a Grand Central
30
now at the.
yeah, on 42nd, right? Yeah.
42nd, but also the new one at the
Well,
north.
Oh, yeah.
Grand
42nd.
Central LIR, which is nowhere near Grand Central. It's at Jamie Diamond's office.
Yeah. So that's a topic that, needs to find a home. 14th, 34th busway, so during the 34th Street busway discussions, people raised concerns that there are a lot of people who don't understand how the local access part of that works. It's not like no cars are ever allowed on here. And part of what's happened is that Ubers and taxis are afraid to go onto these streets to pick people up because they don't think somehow that they're allowed to be. So as part of 34th Street, the DOT was saying, well, we'll try and be a little clearer, but there's only so much room on a sign. And so the question is, well, what message can we deliver, particularly to taxi drivers and Uber drivers about that they're allowed in here to pick up fares. So it was kind of a specific issue. I don't know how much application it has elsewhere, but I know DOT is going to try and look at it a little more closely on 34th Street busway. Maybe we'll just add this as a specific item to 34th Street busway.
Why is it different from 14th Street?
It's not, it's, the issue was raised on 14th. And so it's like, how should it be applied in both places? Yeah. DOT work planning, I mean, that's part of the discussion we'd be having with the borough commissioner about, how does our relationship work, and do we meet on a regular basis, and do you brief us on how things are going? MTA outreach, it's what I mentioned, that there are just certain cases. The example for where I live is the 14th Street elevator project. I mean, that was, I think, $300 million for 9 elevators. It tore up 14th Street everywhere. And I lived there. I was not aware of any public input a little bit because they went down the street and talked to the people that run the businesses who they kind of screwed over anyway. I mean, it was a total mess. So I don't know that it was unavoidable because it was all utilities in 14th Street that had to be relocated to put these elevators in. So it was a huge project, but we kind of felt like, well, maybe there's a role for the community board when MTA has capital projects in our district where we could coordinate like we do with DOT. I mean, right now, I'm not really aware of MTA coming to us to discuss much of anything, so.
No, I've always seen it, at least for other community boards, when there's this. I guess this street impact, like they did a presentation to CB4 about like a water main replacement. No, it was a power substation upgrade on 20th, I think. There
Okay.
was signal improvements the Penn South people were really mad about,
Right.
as they are about our bus
Yeah.
stops.
Yeah. Yeah, so I think this is like some outreach to MTA's, public people about. Like, we think there's a role for us. We can play interference for you, so you don't have to be the sharp point of the spear. We're happy to sort of go out and get public feedback that we can then digest and bring to you, so. I think it really applies mostly to their big capital projects.
Was there a bid roll, bid roll, or any bid roll on that project?
There may have been, but it was invisible.
What bid is that?
It would have been Union Square. It might have been too far west.
It's too far west.
Yeah, it might have been too far west.
Well, is there a bid on the west side?
Well, they run down 14th to 6th, I want to say.
So, and then after that?
This is, where was it? This was on 14th and,
It was at the intersections of 6th and 7th.
yeah, at least on Sixth Avenue, if it was the northeast or southeast corner of the Union Square partnership, then that's in.
And then after that, is there anything?
No,
Nothing west of?
Not until Meatpacking.
Right, that's okay.
um,
So you guys generally don't have any communication with the MTA or?
very little, yeah. I mean, I'm trying to think like I've been on this committee for 4 years and I can't really think
So I mean,
of.
subway impacts everybody, right? It's a huge part of people's lives and. sure
Yeah.
The community cares about what happens and.
Yeah, I mean, I think they feel like they have a method for getting input, as much input as they want.
Right.
And. We're kind of proposing like, well, maybe you should get some more input. And we could be an instrument for that, but it would really, as I said, it's not about outages, it's about, big capital programs.
There's no statutory requirement that they come to us.
No, I mean, I don't know that there's a statutory requirement to DOT come to us, maybe,
DOT is city and MTA is
Yeah.
off state.
but I mean,
Yeah.
there's city representation on the MTA board, I mean,
Right.
there is a fair amount of overlap. But I mean, yes, this was basically the pitch, like, you don't have to, and you never do, but maybe it makes sense for you to do it.
Right.
Yeah, and then this last thing, I mean, I think it all falls into the same kind of category of trying to do some work planning with other agencies. So, before you all arrived on the committee, we spun off a piece of it, the environment piece. So at this point, we're exclusively transportation issues, and there are plenty of those, but it also means we're working with kind of a more limited number of agencies on the city side. And so kind of more effort to stay in contact with them, know what's going on, and also to kind of look around and see, are there other, quasi transportation type things that are going on in the district where maybe other agencies would be involved and we should be in touch with them. I mean, it would be like, GDC, who does, it's the Department of Design and Construction. So when the city does like big infrastructure stuff, that's the agency that does that work. Right now, our connection with them has been on Broadway Vision. But, it could be somebody, I'm trying to think of an example, there've been a lot of water main improvements, and that's DEP. And they do that work themselves. And we also really, there's a huge water main replacement on 7th Avenue. I'm not sure we've ever really, other than hearing mention of it, I don't think we've seen anything on that yet. So arguably, actually, I'll add that too. That would be a case of, I guess it's DEP coming to us and explaining to us what the calendar is for that.
I think we talked about water mains on 42nd and on 23rd.
Right, because that came to us through DOT and DDC. Mostly 42nd, I remember 23rd, but yeah, 42nd was that whole sort of mini busway and changing the pedestrian flow, widening the sidewalks. Yeah, and what was driving that was a big water main and sewer replacement. So that's the only way we saw it, because it came to us through DOT. So. All right, so, this thing is kind of the structure for meetings going forward and how we make progress and who's working on what. So it would be helpful if everybody I'll send the link around. But it would be good if people started thinking about what you're interested in working on, and we'll put your name next to some of these things. It's more by group. I mean, I know we talked about individual topics. I'm happy for it to effectively be that way. But the idea would be we sort of develop smaller teams so that not everything is the, whatever we are, 14 members of the committee. It's broken into subgroups, and then everybody figures out what they're working on.
And David and Samir innovated this when they came on as chairs, and it's just been, I think, great. For us. And it's allowed, some of us to really, concentrate on things that we're most interested in, and I think we've gotten, shared a lot more information that way.
Yeah, I mean, we've crossed things off the list. I mean, to be honest, we have a little bit of an 80-20 problem, which is 20% of the people do 80% of the work. So we kind of need to come up with a way of keeping people motivated and informed, and I guess, but we could, maybe 50-50, we could get to. But I think the idea would be get people in smaller groups where there's more interaction and working on things that they're interested in. And as I said, being, I hate the word proactive, but let's look for things that maybe you're interested in that you'd like to see happen, and we can start working on that in the committee, but just get some better involvement generally from people on the committee, make more out of it.
It's not a great word, but it's a great process.
Yeah.
Sorry, I get a sorry.
Yeah, sure.
I gotta run.
All righty,
Motion.
thanks.
Gotta
Yeah,
wrap it.
I think we're done, yeah.
Motion to adjourn.
So I will update this and I'll circulate the link. And then I'll pester you constantly about where you want to be and what you want to work on. So, all right,
Thank you.
Thank you.
motion to adjourn. Motion to adjourn, yeah. Have a good end of the summer. I hate to say it.
Yeah.
And we have two more.
This Saturday, Brian Parr tribute to Sly and the Family Stones. Really great musicians. It's gonna be a lot of fun. Cool. If they were. Thank you, spot.
Hi, Tiffany.
Oh, is Tiffany on? I didn't realize.
I have terrible service. I'm sorry. I've been listening though. I'm so sorry. I'm here.
What's your child?
Good.